It's 11:47 p.m., October 1958, the Copacabana, New York. Frank Sinatra is 3 songs into his second set when he sees them. 2 men in gray suits, standing at the back of the room. They're not drinking. They're not smoking. They're not watching the show. They're watching him. Frank knows exactly who they are. He's been expecting them for 3 weeks, ever since that phone call, ever since that meeting he refused to take. The band finishes "Come Fly With Me." The audience erupts. But Frank doesn't smile. He walks to the microphone, loosens his bow tie, and says something that makes the room go quiet. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to sing you a song that isn't on the program tonight. I'm dedicating it to 2 friends of mine in the back. They know who they are." He nods to the band. They exchange confused glances. This isn't rehearsed. And then Frank Sinatra does something that will echo through the halls of J. Edgar Hoover's FBI for the next 30 years. He opens his mouth and turns a simple song into an act of war. To understand what happened that night at the Copa, you need to understand what America looked like in 1958, and more importantly, what the FBI looked like. J. Edgar Hoover had turned the Bureau into his personal empire. He had files on everyone: senators, judges, movie stars, anyone with power, anyone with secrets. Hoover knew about them, and he used that knowledge like a scalpel. Hollywood was one of his favorite hunting grounds. The entertainment industry was crawling with what Hoover called subversives, communists, sympathizers, people who asked too many questions or knew too many of the wrong people. Frank Sinatra was both. By 1958, Frank had rebuilt his career from the ashes. The early 50s had nearly destroyed him. His voice had failed. His marriage had collapsed. The studios had abandoned him. But then came From Here to Eternity, the Oscar, the comeback that shouldn't have been possible. Now he was bigger than ever, and that made him useful. Hoover had been building a file on Sinatra since 1944. Over 1,000 pages documenting Frank's associations, his friendships with known organized crime figures, his left-leaning politics, his support for civil rights causes that made certain people in Washington very uncomfortable. But Hoover didn't want to destroy Frank Sinatra. He wanted to own him. The approach came in late September 1958. Frank was in New York, preparing for a 2-week engagement at the Copacabana. He was staying at the Waldorf Astoria in the same suite he always requested. Room service, privacy, a piano in the corner for late-night sessions when sleep wouldn't come. The knock came at 3 a.m. Frank answered the door in his robe, a glass of bourbon in his hand. He was expecting room service. What he got was 2 men who didn't need to show badges. "Mr. Sinatra, we apologize for the hour. May we come in?" Frank didn't move from the doorway. "That depends. You selling something?" "We're from the Bureau. We have a proposition for you." Frank took a long sip of his bourbon. "The Bureau doesn't make propositions at 3 a.m. They make threats. So let's skip the foreplay. What do you want?" The agents exchanged glances. They weren't used to this. Most people, when the FBI knocked, they trembled. They cooperated. They said yes, sir, and no, sir, and whatever you need, sir. Frank Sinatra leaned against the doorframe and waited. "Mr. Sinatra, we're aware of your relationships with certain individuals of interest to ongoing investigations." "You mean my friends?" "We mean people who are dangerous to this country." Frank laughed. It wasn't a friendly sound. "Dangerous to this country. That's rich. You want to talk about dangerous? Let's talk about a man who keeps secret files on half of Congress. Let's talk about wiretaps and blackmail. And Mr. Sinatra," the agent's voice hardened. "We're offering you an opportunity. Cooperate with us. Share what you know. Help us build cases against these individuals. And in return, certain complications in your own file will disappear." Frank set down his glass. He walked closer to the agents, close enough that they could smell the bourbon on his breath. "Let me make sure I understand. You want me to rat on my friends, wear a wire to dinner parties, report back on private conversations?" He smiled, but his eyes were ice. "And if I don't, you'll what? Leak my file to the papers?" Destroy my career? Again? We're not threatening you, Mr. Sinatra. No, you're just reminding me of my options. Frank stepped back into his room. Here's my answer. Go to hell and tell your boss I said it with a smile. He slammed the door in their faces. The next morning, Frank called his lawyer. Then he called his manager. Then he called Dean Martin. Dino, I need you to listen to me. The feds came to my room last night. They want me to inform on certain people. I told them no. Dean was quiet for a long moment. Frank, you sure that's smart? These guys don't play around. Neither do I. I'm serious. Hoover's got a long memory. You make an enemy of the Bureau, they'll make your life hell. They already have files on me thicker than a phone book. What else can they do? They can do plenty, Frank. They can audit you every year for the rest of your life. They can make sure you never work in a government building. They can whisper in the right ears and suddenly your movies don't get made, your records don't get played. Frank lit a cigarette. Then let them. I'm not going to be their puppet. I'm not going to betray people who trusted me. Over the next 2 weeks, the pressure intensified. Frank's accountant called. The IRS was initiating an audit. Routine, they said. Nothing to worry about. His publicist called. A reporter from a Washington paper was asking questions about Frank's communist sympathies. Where did that come from? His manager called. 2 venues had suddenly canceled upcoming bookings. Scheduling conflicts, they claimed. Frank knew what was happening. This was Hoover's playbook. Slow strangulation. Make life difficult enough that cooperation seems like the only way out. But Frank had survived worse. He'd survived losing his voice. He'd survived losing Ava. He'd survived being written off by an entire industry. A few bureaucrats in cheap suits weren't going to break him. The FBI agents appeared at every show. Front row, back row, standing by the exits. Always watching. Always reminding him that they were there. Frank ignored them. He sang his songs. He told his jokes. He acted like they didn't exist. But inside, he was planning something. October 18th, 1958. The Copacabana, second show of the night. The room is packed. Senators, socialites, movie stars, mobsters. In 1958, they all drank at the same bars. And tonight, they're all here to see Frank. The FBI agents are in their usual spot. Back of the room, gray suits, dead eyes. Frank walks on stage to thunderous applause. He's wearing a tuxedo that cost more than most people's cars. He looks relaxed, confident, like a man without a care in the world. He runs through his first set. I've got you under my skin. The lady is a tramp. Come fly with me. The crowd loves every note. Then Frank stops. He takes off his jacket. He loosens his tie. He walks to the edge of the stage and sits down, legs dangling over the side, like he's about to have a conversation with old friends. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk to you for a minute about freedom. The room goes quiet. This country was built on freedom. Freedom to speak, freedom to think, freedom to associate with whoever you damn well please. He pauses. But lately, I've noticed something. There are people in this country who don't believe in freedom. They believe in control. They believe in fear. They believe that the way to keep America safe is to make Americans afraid of each other. He looks directly at the back of the room, at the 2 gray suits. I've been asked recently to do something I can't do. I've been asked to betray my principles, to turn my back on people who trusted me, to become something I'm not. He shakes his head. I said no, and I'll keep saying no. Because the day I stop being Frank Sinatra, the day I start being someone's tool, that's the day I stop being worth anything at all. The room is absolutely silent. People are looking at each other, trying to understand what's happening. Frank stands up. He walks back to the microphone. I'm going to sing you a song now. It's not on the program. Some of you might know it. It's called The House I Live In. The band exchanges confused looks. This isn't rehearsed, but they know the song. Everyone knows the song. Frank recorded it in 1945. The piano begins, soft, simple, and Frank Sinatra starts to sing. What is America to me? A name, a map, or a flag I see? A certain word? Democracy? What is America to me? His voice fills the room. That voice that had been broken and rebuilt. That voice that carried more pain and more triumph than any voice had a right to carry. The house I live in, a plot of earth, a street, the grocer and the butcher, and the people that I meet, the children in the playground, the faces that I see. All races and religions, that's America to me. He's not just singing now, he's testifying. Every word is aimed at those two men in the back. Every note is a declaration. The place I work in, the worker by my side, the little town or city where my people lived and died, the howdy and the handshake, the air of feeling free, and the right to speak my mind out, that's America to me. The audience begins to understand. This isn't just a song, this is an answer. This is Frank Sinatra telling the FBI, in front of 500 witnesses, exactly what he thinks of their proposition. He builds to the final verse, his voice rising with controlled fury. The words of old Abe Lincoln, of Jefferson and Payne, of Washington and Douglas, and the tasks that still remain. The house I live in, the goodness everywhere. A land of wealth and beauty, with enough for all to share. He holds the last note. The room explodes. Not just applause, a standing ovation. People are crying. People are cheering. Frank looks at the back of the room. The two agents are gone. He smiles, and for the first time in weeks, it reaches his eyes. The next morning, the story was everywhere. Not in the papers were too afraid to touch it. But in the whisper networks of New York and Hollywood and Washington, everyone was talking about what Frank Sinatra had done. He had challenged the FBI, in public, with a song. The Bureau didn't take it well. Hoover's file on Sinatra grew thicker. The surveillance continued for decades. Every tax return scrutinized, every association documented, every mistake cataloged. But they never approached him again. They never asked him to inform. Some battles, even Hoover knew, weren't worth fighting twice. Frank continued to sing "The House I Live In" for the rest of his career. It became his anthem, his statement. Every time he performed it, people remembered what it really meant. Years later, when asked about that night at the Copa, Frank would deflect with a joke. "I just felt like changing the set list. A singer's got to keep things interesting." But those who were there knew the truth. They had witnessed something rare. A man who had been given a choice between safety and integrity, and had chosen to fight back with the only weapon he had: his voice. One night, one song, one man who refused to be silenced. The FBI wanted Frank Sinatra to become their eyes and ears, to trade his integrity for their protection, to join the machinery of fear that was grinding through America in the 1,950 seconds. Frank's answer was a 3-minute song about democracy. It wasn't a grand gesture. He didn't hold a press conference. He didn't write an angry letter. He simply stood on a stage and reminded everyone, including himself, what he believed in. Art isn't just entertainment. It's not just commerce. At its best, art is a weapon, a way of saying truths that can't be spoken any other way, a way of fighting back without throwing a punch. Frank Sinatra understood this better than anyone. He knew that his voice was more powerful than any file Hoover could compile. He knew that a song, sung with conviction, could echo longer than any threat. Today, we live in a world that still asks us to compromise, to stay quiet, to go along, to betray our principles for the sake of convenience or safety. What would you do? When the knock comes at your door, when the men in suits make their proposition, what will your answer be? Frank Sinatra gave them a song. What will you give them? This is the part of Frank Sinatra's story they didn't teach you in music class. The night he turned a microphone into a weapon and a ballad into a battle cry. This was Frank Sinatra, Legacy Confidential. If this story made you think differently about what courage looks like, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you don't miss the stories that history tried to bury. And tell us in the comments, when was the last time you used your voice, whatever form that takes, to stand up for what you believe in? Until next time, keep singing, even when they don't want you to.